If you remember right at the start, I talked about the underpants gnomes and their business plan, which was phase 1, collect underpants, phase 2, we're not sure, and phase 3, profit. And phase 2 was the important thing that they hadn't clarified. So I want to give you a bit more nuance on how to identify phase 2, because phase 2 is the area that you're going to write in your OKRs and especially in your key results. You can think of key results on a spectrum, starting at actions or tasks, things like collecting underpants. These create outputs, the things that you produce. And these things you produce deliver outcomes, which are the value you're really creating. And hopefully those outcomes result in profit. Generally, these are addressed by different levels of responsibility and maturity in an organization. At the lowest level, especially with a very junior team on some topic, a manager may need to micromanage the specific tasks and actions to be carried out, and that might be the best thing to do. Now, this even happens with senior people when it's a new domain for them. It's literally anywhere where there's insufficient experience, judgment, and initiative to take on a high level of responsibility in a specific domain. And that often happens when new responsibilities are given to someone. But generally, though, as you get more senior with more experience in a specific domain, you move through being responsible for actions and tasks into responsible for outputs and deciding which actions to take to generate them. And then more senior leaders, again, are responsible for outcomes and deciding which outputs will generate those outcomes. Eventually, we're selecting our strategy and trying to figure out what outcomes we want to create that will generate the profits we want to deliver. And that usually happens somewhere around CEO, board, or even shareholder. Most of what makes a company unique happens at the outcome level. So what we really want to do is focus all of our leadership energy and hence our OKRs on this middle area, phase 2, from the underpants gnomes. In practice, though, profit and actions are much easier for us to think about, so we tend to start from there. And I'd like to talk about how you can move from there towards the center. So here's how to convert your key results from actions to outcomes. What you're trying to do is empower people to decide which actions and which outputs are best. This is what the underpants gnomes should be doing. And you can use these 4 questions to help move from actions and tasks to outcomes. Number 1, why are we doing this? Number 2, how would we know if we were successful? Number 3, how will our customers measure our success? And number 4, what alternative actions could we do? That will, by the way, help you figure out, well, what's the actual point, right? If you can have alternatives, there must be something that ties them together. Now, what we're really trying to do here is figure out what exactly does success look like? Or how do we define success? Just simply doing a task. Can we do the task badly and well? And what differentiates doing this task well from doing it badly? Like not what the actions are, but what outcome? How do we tell if it was done well or not done badly? On the other side, if you want to convert profit to outcome, you want to narrow down the options to align with strategy. A company I worked with once had this problem where the CEO only defined profitability targets. And so all the top level managers had their own ideas about how to do it. And there was no coherent strategy at all and lots of infighting. And what you want to do is avoid that situation. You want to have enough clarity about your strategy and express that strategy through your objectives and especially your key results so that people are focused on implementing the same strategy. To do this, you can ask these 4 questions. Number 1, how are we creating this profit? Number 2, what value is created that we are capturing? Number 3, what's the input for this output? And number 4, what differentiates our strategy from others who may be trying to generate the same profit? And you can use this with not just profit as in money, but profit as in anything that's a little bit too abstract for the context of your team that you're working with. So these tips can help you get your key results at the right level, that phase 2. And this can be hard work because there's a lot of ambiguity here. There's a lot of ambiguity between actions and profit to find out what this phase 2 should be. It's really the domain of strategy to decide what goes on here. So if you haven't got a clear strategy, it's actually really hard to decide what outputs and what outcomes you're actually trying to do here. So the thing is, if you don't do this clearly, if you don't communicate whatever you actually want to create with OKRs or some other mechanism, what you're doing, in effect, is delegating the strategy decisions to everyone. And that's not going to work out well because you'll end up with lots of different ideas. But sometimes having a key result at the wrong level is okay. What I mean by that is like sometimes you might need something that errs on the side of profit because you simply don't know the strategy and you need someone to figure out the strategy. And the actual task here is to figure out the strategy. Sometimes you might have actions because you have a junior enough team. Do what you need for your team and your situation. Don't overstress getting the perfect level here, right? As a leader, you can fill the gaps left by the key results in your daily work of management. And that's what we'll talk about in the execution cycle and in fact, in the planning habit as well. I want to just go through some other tips on writing key results. Firstly, choose a key result that drives the right behavior. Now, I've mentioned this a few times, but your key results are mostly there to help your team create great results. Prioritize this over everything else. Sometimes this may mean breaking other rules, but that's okay. What you're looking for is a key result that will drive your team to solve the right problem, right? And keep them focused in the same area, giving them enough scope to be creative, but enough constraints to be focused on a shared goal. And this depends on you knowing your team well, which is core to being a good leader. Secondly, make sure it matters to customers, internal or external. Now, often we get caught up in the internal concerns of our team or business and write key results that seem important to us, but don't actually matter to customers. These might be things like reduce the number of steps to deploy code from 20 to 13. And sure, that may be a good thing to do, but it's often better to focus on something that matters to customers more directly, such as decrease the time taken to get code into production from 3 days to 4 hours. Right? Now, that may involve primarily reducing the number of steps, about specific steps you want to reduce, or reducing other things here. But now you're focused on getting something that matters to customers. Customers now get value earlier from when you do a change. If your customer doesn't care about this, it might not be worth doing. So try to make sure your key results are things your customers care about. Now, in a sense, this can conflict a little with driving the right behavior, especially if you think you know what the right solution is. But your ideal is to communicate what matters to your customers and then manage as you can to get the right behavior. Number 3, make sure success is unambiguous. What I mean by this is that at the end of the quarter, when you look at your key results, it should be crystal clear whether you have succeeded or not. For example, say you have a key result saying redesign our website to be easy to use on mobile. At the end of the quarter, you've got a complete design. It's half coded up and implemented on the test site. And the live site has a few improvements that make it responsive with the old design. Someone thinks you succeeded because you have the design complete. Someone thinks you failed because it's not live. Someone else thinks the new design isn't easy to use on mobile. And someone else thinks that you succeeded because the live site is easier to use now, even without the new design. So this may seem a bit extreme, but it's amazing how much ambiguity can creep in. And the real problem with this is not just at the end of the quarter when you're trying to assess the key result, because that doesn't matter that much. It's actually during the quarter. If people can't agree on exactly what success looks like, if they have different interpretations of what success looks like, then they won't be working on the same things to get there, and you'll get worse results than if everyone was aligned. So try to make sure that the key result is crystal clear what success actually is. Fourthly, use your plan and manage actively. Accept some risk with the key results. We often like to imagine that we could write key results, and if we meet them and do nothing else, everything will be perfect. Sort of as if we can wrap up all the work of management and encode it into 3 or 4 single sentences, and then basically be able to set these sentences and sit back and relax and watch the magic happen. But reality doesn't work that way. Usually there's more ambiguity than that, and there are things you missed or things you decided to omit. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Write good key results and manage the risks actively using your plan and active management. We'll be talking about planning in the next section on the planning habit and how to use the plan in the execution cadence. The point here is to not expect that writing the key results is going to do magic. And finally, some specific tips for key results with metrics in them. Firstly, choose a metric that represents sustained change. And what I mean by that is don't choose a metric that sort of like is going through the quarter and then you get to the end of the quarter and you could potentially hit that metric, like we've signed this many clients or something like that. And then next quarter, you've got to start again from scratch. Try and focus on the sustained change, like the pattern or the habit or the process, right? And use rolling averages so you can track progress. And in some ways this is related, but you look at that graph on the right there, you can see there's 3 different colors. There's a sort of reddy orange one, and that's like this. The problem with this number here, if you imagine this is the quarter and the numbers going up through the quarter, is that whatever's happening, you haven't got there until the very end. This might be something like signing clients, and you go through the process of working to sign the clients, and then at the end of this quarter, suddenly you release them, or even releasing features or doing something like that. You release everything at the end, and suddenly you get the benefit. The problem is that you don't know how you're going during the quarter. On the other hand, the yellow one has a lot of noise in it, so it just goes up and down a lot. Now, this may even happen with something that's like how many clients I've onboarded per week. Some weeks you have good weeks and some weeks bad weeks. Try and find the right rolling average to be able to make that smooth enough so it looks much more like the blue one. Now, this isn't critical, but it really helps you a lot. I just want to give you 2 examples of things that I think illustrate this kind of thing well. If you were to say increase total clients onboarded this quarter from 0 to 42, This is simply a quarterly work target, and we could work on this by just working really, really hard. We could work on this and put them all at the end of the quarter or at the start of the quarter or whatever it is, and it wouldn't necessarily be improving us in a sustainable way. It's actually quite hard to tell where we're up to with this. In fact, at the start of the quarter, what matters is how fast are we doing this, right, on a regular basis. So hence, try something like increase the clients onboarded per week from 1.3 to 2.5 as a 7-day average, right, a rolling average. Now, what that tells us is that at the very start of the quarter, we've got some number of clients that we're regularly onboarding every week, and you're trying to increase that. So now you're trying to improve this sustainably, and you're trying to improve the process. There is a risk, by the way, that you won't get to your 42 target. But the important thing is that you're improving your capacity to do so. And if you're improving this over the course of the quarter, you probably get to your 42 target, assuming I've got my numbers correct. But you can also manage to that. You still need to get to 42 as well. But the key thing is, like, what we're really trying to do here underlying is improve our capacity for onboarding, not just onboard a certain number of clients. And that is a much more sustainable result. So when you're thinking about key results, try to think about things that matter for the longer term.